We begin with a passage that has chilled human blood for centuries, but one we rarely read in the context of our own modern psychology. The Gospel of Matthew records it like this. Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you?" And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. So from that time, he sought opportunity to betray him. 30 pieces of silver, the price of a common slave, the price of a god. But if you think this story is only about a man in sandals from 2,000 years ago, you are deeply mistaken. This is the story of every single one of us when life fails to deliver what we ordered. Judas wasn't a monster from a fairy tale. He was one of the 12. He was in the center of the fire. He saw miracles that we only dream of scripting. He walked beside a man who was the embodiment of love. And that is exactly what destroyed him. Because Judas had a plan. Judas had a vision of what a Messiah should look like. He had a pre-written script for political victory, for liberation from the Roman boot, for triumph and worldly glory. He wanted a revolution of fire and steel. And what did he get? Sermons about loving enemies and the washing of dirty feet. This is the moment where betrayal is born. Not at the moment the money changes hands, but at the moment your expectations collide with reality and you decide that reality is a mistake. In 2026, we are all the little Judases of our own scripts. We build digital and mental towers of Babel. We have a vision of what our careers should look like by 30, how our partners should behave, how our ideal spiritual life should feel. And when life doesn't give it to us, when God is silent, when the career stalls, when the relationship turns out to be hard work rather than a romantic comedy, we feel betrayed. And that's when we start looking for our 30 pieces of silver. The silver isn't always money. The silver is anything you choose as compensation for your disappointment. It might be cynicism, that cold, safe armor you put on so that nothing can hurt you again. It might be an escape into an addiction, a mindless scroll, or a toxic relationship. You tell yourself, since I didn't get the big success, I'll at least take this moment of cheap pleasure. You sell your authenticity for the illusion of control. The ultimate tragedy of Judas wasn't that he hated Jesus. He likely loved him, but he loved him as a tool to achieve his own ends. He wanted Jesus to be what he imagined, and Jesus refused to be a puppet. We do the same thing. We try to force God, the universe, and the people around us to dance to our tune. And when they refuse, when they prove to be free beings with their own paths, we fly into a rage. Our expectations are nothing more than an attempt to micromanage reality. It is a form of spiritual violence. The sense of disappointment you feel today, that bitterness that it was supposed to be different, that is your battlefield. You can stay there and let that disappointment burn you alive, or you can do what Judas couldn't. Kill your script. Betrayal begins where your consent for life to be different from your imagination ends. Judas couldn't stand a Jesus who loses. He couldn't stand a Messiah who goes to a cross. To him, that was a weakness that could not be accepted. So he decided to speed up the process. He thought that if he handed Jesus over, Jesus would finally be forced to show his power, to descend from heaven in glory. He tried to blackmail God. Ask yourself, in what areas of your life are you trying to blackmail fate? Where are you saying, I will do this and this, but you must give me that? Where are you trading your integrity, hoping that you will finally force life into giving you happiness? 30 pieces of silver is the price you pay to stop trusting and start manipulating. It is the moment you decide your vision is better than what is actually happening. But remember this, Judas's silver brought him no joy. The clinking of those coins in his pocket became the loudest accusation in history. Because when you sell the truth for control, you are always left with empty hands and a noise in your head that won't let you sleep. The first chapter of this story is a lesson in letting go. Until you drop your script, you won't see your real life. As long as you try to force reality into obedience, you will be standing in line for your silver. The question for today is, do you love life, or do you only love your idea of it? And what are you willing to sell just to feel like you were right? Take a breath. Your expectations are not facts. They are just chains you forged yourself. It's time to take them off before you meet the high priests of your own ego, who are all too happy to pay you your 30 pieces of silver. The exchange didn't happen in a dark alleyway. It happened in the halls of religious power. There is a chilling clinicality to the transaction, and they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. There was no negotiation. There was no haggling. Judas didn't ask for a kingdom. He asked for a payout. In the second act of our own inner drama, we have to look at the valuation of our souls. We have to ask the most uncomfortable question a human can face. What is your price? We all like to believe we are priceless. We like to think that our integrity, our faith, and our deepest values are not for sale. But 30 pieces of silver represents a specific kind of temptation. It's not the temptation of ultimate power or infinite wealth. It's the temptation of enough. It's the price of a mid-range comfort, a temporary fix, a small step up the ladder that requires just a tiny compromise of the heart. The tragedy of the 30 pieces is that they are so ordinary. In 2026, the deal rarely looks like a bag of coins. It looks like a strategic career move that requires you to step on someone else's neck. It looks like keeping the peace by staying silent when you should have spoken for the truth. It looks like selling your focus to an algorithm for a hit of dopamine. It looks like trading your presence with your children for another hour of productivity because you're afraid of not having enough. We sell our Jesus, our connection to the divine, our inner truth, in small installments. We don't betray the core of who we are all at once. We do it in 30 small silver increments. When Judas felt the weight of that silver in his hand for a split second, he probably felt powerful. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't a follower. He was a player. He was taking charge. He was finally doing something about the situation. This is the seductive lie of the silver. It makes you feel like you've finally gained control over a chaotic life. When we compromise our values for security, we feel a brief surge of relief. At least now I'm safe, we say. At least now I have a seat at the table. But there is a spiritual law of physics you cannot escape. Whatever you buy with your soul, you can never truly enjoy. The silver in Judas's pocket didn't feel like wealth for long. It started to feel like lead. It started to burn through the fabric of his clothes. Why? Because the objects we obtain through betrayal carry the energy of the betrayal itself. That promotion you got by lying, it will always feel like a lie. That relationship you started by being unfaithful, it will always be haunted by infidelity. The success you built on a foundation of ego will never let you rest, because you know, deep down, that you don't actually own it. It owns you. We live in a marketplace of souls. Every day, the world offers us 30 pieces of silver to just tone it down, to fit in, to stop being so difficult about our convictions. The high priests of our culture, the influencers, the CEOs, the gatekeepers, are always ready to count out the coins. And the scariest part, they don't have to force us. We go to them. The scripture says, Judas went to the chief priests. He took the initiative. He sought out the transaction. Often, our greatest betrayals aren't forced upon us by circumstances. They are solutions we come up with to escape the tension of faith. We are tired of waiting for the miracle, tired of the silence, tired of being the only one who cares. So we go looking for a deal. We go looking for a shortcut. We say, if God won't act, I will. But the action of Judas was the death of his future. He traded an eternal seat at the table for a handful of metal that he would eventually throw back onto the floor in a fit of agony. Take a moment to look at your silver. Look at the things you've prioritized over your peace, your family, and your truth. Look at the compromises you've made to feel secure in an insecure world. Is the silver heavy yet? Does it still feel like a win? Or can you start to hear the faint, metallic clinking of a deal that is slowly costing you everything? In the second chapter, we stop blaming the world for tempting us and start looking at why we are so eager to be bought. Because the moment you realize that 30 pieces of silver is an insultingly low price for your soul, you might just find the strength to walk out of the temple. The deal isn't done until you decide to keep the coins. There is a moment in the story that is often overlooked. It happens right after the deal is done, right after the kiss in the garden and the arrest of the man who did nothing but love. Matthew chapter 27, verse 3, records the chilling realization. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. He tried to give it back. He stood in the same temple before the same men who had counted out the coins, and he shouted, "I have sinned, for I have betrayed innocent blood." And their response, the coldest sentence in all of literature. What is that to us? That's your responsibility. This is the final stage of the Judas paradox, the realization that the world, the ego, the system, the high priests of success, doesn't care about you once the transaction is complete. They got what they wanted. You are left with the silver, and the silver is screaming. In the final chapter of our lives, we often find ourselves standing in our own field of blood. This is the place where regret becomes a physical weight. Judas didn't just feel bad, he was hollowed out. He realized that he had destroyed the only thing that gave his life meaning, all for the sake of a script that failed and a currency that was worthless. We often talk about repentance as something beautiful, but Judas shows us the dark side of regret, remorse without hope. He saw his mistake with perfect 4K clarity. He saw that Jesus was innocent. He saw that his 30 pieces of silver couldn't buy a single second of peace. But he made the fatal mistake of believing that his sin was bigger than God's mercy. He looked at the cross and saw his failure, instead of seeing his exit. In 2026, we are haunted by our fields of blood. We look back at the years we wasted chasing a ghost, the relationships we burned for the sake of our pride, the moments we sold our souls for a like or a win. And the noise of that regret can be deafening. But here is the twist in the paradox. The difference between a saint and a traitor is not the sin. It's what they do with the silence afterward. Think about Peter. Peter betrayed Jesus too. On the same night under the same sky, Peter stood by a fire and swore 3 times that he never knew the man. Peter's betrayal was just as loud as Judas's. The difference? Judas went to the priest. Peter went to the garden. Judas looked at the silver. Peter looked at the face. Judas tried to fix it himself. Peter waited for Jesus to fix it. The field of blood is a place we all visit. It's that room in your mind where you replay your worst decisions at 3 a.m. It's the silence that follows a massive mistake. But that silence isn't a death sentence, unless you decide it is. Judas took his own life because he couldn't bear the silence of God. He couldn't understand that the man he betrayed was currently dying for the betrayal. He was paying for the very coins Judas was holding. We live in a culture that doesn't know how to handle failure. We are told to optimize, to hustle, to never look back. So when we inevitably mess up, when we realize we've been chasing the wrong things, we don't know where to go. We feel like we have to return the silver to a world that doesn't want it back. But you don't have to die in your field of blood. The message of the 30 pieces of silver is this: you cannot buy your way into heaven, and you cannot singe your way out of it. The silver is a lie. The betrayal is a lesson. The silence of the field is not the end of the story. It's the intermission. If you are standing there today, holding the silver of a choice you regret, staring at a life that didn't go according to your script, I want you to do the one thing Judas couldn't: stay in the silence. Don't run to the rope. Don't run back to the priests. Just wait, because the morning is coming. And the man you betrayed has a habit of showing up on Sunday morning, walking through locked doors and asking, "Do you love me?" The coins are on the floor. The deal is over. Now, finally, your real life can begin. And that is the greatest miracle of all.